All the heads are still in the shop for Lefty. So today, we're going to continue on the RD4 we lovingly call Whiskers. We're arguing over what temperature to keep the shop. Dad likes it at about 45, and I said 50 because we're going to be using some silicone on parts here. I try to time my camera shoots so that the stove's not running in the background, but it is so cold outside today that it's running almost non-stop. So you're going to have to bear with us today.
I'm checking all these push rods. I've got one that looks like it's maybe came out of adjustment and it got beat on there a little bit.
Yeah, around the edges.
See the difference?
Yeah. All of them look straight. None of them are bent, but we have the old ones from Lefty, which is a same casting number engine, same part number, so we might just swap that one out. To catch up everybody on the story of this tractor, this is Dad's baby. We got it, well, I worked on the head on it. The gentleman that had it said he'd sell it. We ended up buying it. The head was off. It was nice. We could see inside the engine, see what it was in really good shape. So the deal was that we put the head on and fix it up. So that's what we're doing. And then of course, you know, we tore into a few other things while we were at it.
The push rods out of that engine should be around here somewhere.
Well, this is why we are getting a storage system for all these parts, because we're running into problems where we can't. It was fine. I was able to keep it organized on the shelf when it was just Lefty in here, but now we got, what, 15 of these things?
Yeah. All right. A little more.
Go your way. I'm on this mat.
There. That's good.
Remember to put the fan shroud on first, because you won't get that around this fan if you do it otherwise. Dad's putting a little bit of high temp exhaust paint. Someone right now is screaming, saying, those are supposed to be silver. And my answer to that is, yeah, they are. Now, I've mentioned the McCoy overhaul, and that's what this machine went through. This machine was originally sold by the McCoy Caterpillar dealership here in Denver. They had one down in southeast Colorado, I think into New Mexico, and several other locations, but they had a deal where they would bring in an old piece of equipment and pretty much completely rebuild it and repaint it, and that is how you see this RD4 right here today after the McCoy overhaul, and they also upgraded to the newer style bolts. So we found very few of the original CL, best CL marked bolts on this, as opposed to Lefty over here, which never, to my knowledge, got the McCoy overhaul. Chasing a few of these threads so that everything goes together smoothly. On the bottom of the radiator here, where it goes into here, which comes out of the water pump, we're going to use the Caterpillar 2A3541. Now the book calls for 2 of these gaskets down here, so we will definitely double them up. On the water neck, where it goes into the head on this square looking flange, that's going to take the 2A3599. Again, it calls for 2 of these doubled up. Coming out of the water pump here at the top, that's going to take the 2A3541, just like at the bottom. Again, these are doubled up, 2 gaskets. The top of the radiator, this is a 2A1175 gasket. We don't have those, so we've made them. And yes, if you have them, they're doubled up. This RD4 has the fuel tower upgrade on it, as opposed to the one we originally rebuilt for Lefty that looked like this, that had the metal strainers on the inside. It calls for 2 2A5769 gaskets to go here. Cat doesn't have them, so we made them. And that goes in here on the water neck. And trust me, doubling up the gaskets makes a difference, because those parts need a little bit of room for flex, and not everything is exactly right. So that gives you a little bit of room for comfort. Because everything that is going on here is for a water passage. I'm using the JB Weld blue silicone. We used all JB Weld silicone products on Lefty.
I think we're a little bit high.
I must be getting old. Like, I cut the tip off of the little nozzle that comes with this. I threw the tip away, and then I walked over here. I set it down somewhere, and I don't know where it is. So, you know what? We're just going to do it live.
Gonna have to change oil in this right away.
We'll run it, set the valves, and then, you know, it would help if I open this thing up. I'm going to just stick this on here and start the bolt through them.
Yeah.
There. Okay. It started. It's in.
That one isn't.
Yeah. Yep, we're in. I'm not going to tighten these down. We'll let the silicone set and cure. And then once it's cured, then I'll snug it down. Dad got the oil cooler lines all hooked up. I guess we'll put this whole Rubik's Cube of stuff. There's 4 places it's got to seal. And 4 different gaskets doubled up. So in this case, and we made homemade gaskets for some of these. They are actually thicker than a single, they're about a thickness and a half of a single Caterpillar gasket. So we're going to make that up with silicone. We're going to put a nice thick bead in there with the gasket. We'll loosely assemble everything. And then when we come out tomorrow morning, we'll snug everything down. These are always fun, and you can see clear down in there. There's interference bolts there. There's interference bolts there, and you got to line all this stuff. It actually, after we got it kind of under control, it went pretty good. So everything's just snugged down very loosely. Cleaner is cleaning up the abundance of silicone. I'm not afraid to use silicone. If I'd had my perfect tip, I don't know where I'd put it, but that'll look a lot better.
Well, the main thing is that it don't leak.
This is D4 assembly manifest. This chap right here has got me in a headlock. I see you know your judo well. All this stuff is sat overnight and had a chance to cure. Now we're going to torque everything down.
All right, what's next?
I think we should check the magneto.
Yes.
Turn this over, and Dad has graciously volunteered to hold the end of the spark plug wire. So
Dad has not. Dad knows better than that. I learned that when I was about 7 years old.
Although Grandpa did zap you with that magneto that was sitting on the bench one day for fun.
By accident.
Not by accident. There actually is a little backstory to that. The magneto is right there, sitting on the shelf. Grandpa and I were working in the shop, and Dad came home from a job, and that was sitting on the bench. Grandpa picked it up from some farm auction or sale or something, and Dad says, I bet that thing don't even work. So he went over there and started cranking it by hand, and it zapped him pretty good. And Grandpa and I had a pretty good laugh. Dad, not so much. He might not remember it because it shocked him so hard.
It shocked my memory.
Yeah. These old pony motors, on the newer ones, they only got one way you can really wind the rope, but it is possible to wind it backwards on these early ones. And I've got the lights turned down in here so we can see the spark a little better.
Oh, yeah.
We got spark there?
We got spark there.
Let's check this other side. Ready?
Yeah. There it goes.
Okay,
yeah,
we're fine.
Definitely.
So the magneto works. Up next, I'm going to loosen these all up and hook up my fuel lines to the injectors. Dad's going to put the racks in here. We'll do maybe a cold valve setting to get it close. We'll hook up all of our oil lines on here and on the other side, and we'll get this covered up, and then we'll move on to the pony motor. Got to get this oil line hooked up too, going up here to the head. We've replaced the one push rod. Dad's inspected all of these. The one on the top was kind of mashed out a little bit, but the rest of these are all nice and straight. Dad's over cleaning up the fuel lines that go to these injectors. I'm going to loosen all of these up, get them lined up. We're going to clean up the lines that go from the pump to the injectors, and you'll remember that these are all brand new, well, new old stock rebuilt, Cat rebuilt injectors. And we kept the original ones too. So these injectors were still working just fine. These are the original 4 1/4 bore engine injectors, and you can still see the paper cap that was on the ones that we installed in the RD4. Cleaner cleaning. Dad's never happy with his cleaning. But mine's on a whole other level.
Yeah. A whole nother level of poor.
So we found most of the parts for this tractor in the boxes we got with it, but we're missing this tiny line that goes up to here to oil this side. This one we got, and they have replaced some of the rockers with these stamped ones here, and we don't really like those. So I think we're going to swap these out for some of the cast ones off of the other RD4 that we took apart. I've actually thought of a nickname for that RD4. That is Redemption, because it's RD4 4G 6667.
What are you laughing at?
I don't know. You're a little bit compulsive. Obsessive compulsive with cleaning.
Yes, I like things clean. It isn't that I like to clean, it's that I like things clean.
And that looks pretty good. I wanted to take a second to show you guys something really cool I found in the parts book relating to these injectors. Because these injectors actually came with some of those parts installed, and we're actually very lucky to have them. Over here in the parts book, you can see right here that it is showing a 1A7776 seal, and what that is this little ferrule that goes right here to plug up the new, old, in stock, or in storage injectors. And I'm assuming that when you bought brand new injectors, they might have had these on there. But the reason that these are so rare is, for one, you can't get them from Caterpillar, and for two, I imagine that most people just threw them away when they got new injectors. So that is to plug that hole up at the top of the injector. You might be asking, well, then how did you plug up this hole in the injector here? And that is where the 2A4905 plug, which is basically a rubber cork style stopper, well, that goes in here. And then you take the cap with that cork stopper inside, like so, and that would be screwed on here. And these injectors actually came with those installed. And if you go up here in the parts book, they call it an assembly 2A5210. And like it says, not shown, used only for shipping or storage. On the flip side, the 2A4905 will also fit in the fuel barrels here, where you can screw one of those caps on to keep dirt and debris out of the fuel barrel. So we've now got a set of 4 of those. For any repairs that we might do on a fuel pump, we can cap it off correctly. The part number for the plug is a 2A913, and it's showing you use 8, so that would be 4 for the fuel barrels and 1 for each injector up here to cap off the system and keep it clean if you're doing any kind of service on the injectors or the high pressure fuel pump. So those little pieces, as trivial as they might sound, are going to be very useful for Dad and I in the future here in the shop. You might have also seen on the time lapse that I squirted a little bit of oil in all these barrels and in the tops of the injectors. It was just a drop of marble Mr. Oil just to kind of clean things up and keep it lubricated when it first starts. I don't think it'll hurt anything. It's for fuel systems, right? I've chased the threads on all these studs. I'm going to find 4 more studs out. Studs in.
03 is the last.
2A1303.
1303. I can't read them.
I can't either. We figured it out. Those are a 2A1903. And the stamped ones that were in there are a 2F1929. And we're going to take these stamped ones out. Of course, we're going to keep them, but I think we're going to maybe take the ones off of the RD4 Redemption or some of the original ones off of Lefty and replace them. While Dad's getting that taken care of, I'm going to do something. We're going to have to figure out the exhaust manifold because, well, that one's got broken off studs and other things. That's off a head case.
Yeah, and that's off of the...
That's off of Redemption.
Yes.
And this is off of off of Whiskers.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, there you go.
And then we got another one up here off of the real McCoy. So that exhaust manifold has a brazed crack on one side. That would be the best one to use. Maybe I'll see if I can get those studs out up there and
get to work.
Ugh. One of the first pieces of advice that I ever got when we started this project, and I should have heeded it because we decided we were smarter than that, but was to never ever try to take the nuts off of these exhaust manifolds. And well, this is why. They pretty much always break off. I'm gonna try and chase these, and I can put a new stud in here. Probably need to come up with a different silicone kind of a gasket, but I got my work cut out for me on this one. Over on Lefty, I had pretty good success with this trick where you weld a nut on what's left of a broken bolt or stud. The heat expands it, contracts, and it comes out. When we did the radiator, I got literally all of them out with that trick because the heads were completely rusted off. And any time you'd put a socket or a wrench on there, it would just twist it completely off. That worked on all of them. On this exhaust manifold, though, I'm pretty skeptical. I'm going to give it a try. I've got nothing to lose. If it works on just one of these three, I will be happy. Oh, good old Colorado wind. It's not going to get above freezing for the whole week. Let's see if those studs will come out of there. I'm giving this one a 10% chance.
We'll either pop it out or...
It's either moving the stud or it's moving my nut.
I think you just popped the nut off.
I might have. My Harbor Freight wrench. That's what they're good for.
No, it's coming out.
It is coming out. I think we got lucky.
Well, on that one anyway.
Yeah. And yes, my welds aren't necessarily pretty on all of these, but practical over pretty, right, Tom? We're going to try and get the other two out. I'm pleasantly surprised that we even got one of these out. You know, it's kind of a 50% of the time. It works every time. You aren't going to believe this. I got them all out. Every one of them came out of there. And after I welded them, as they were cooling, I sprayed some penetrating oil in there. And they all have penetrating oil around the thread. So it sucked it in there, but look at that. Worked like a charm. LAOL. Approved. I'll take this up on the bench and chase these threads out of here. While I've been working on the exhaust manifold, Dad's over here on the bench. And he's been getting all the rockers freed up, making sure everything's working, pre-lubing everything, and cleaning it up.
There's going to be a little bit of Lefty in Whiskers. A couple rockers.
Dad found one of these that's bent, so he's replacing it.
Yeah, this one is bent. It won't. That's as far as it'll go, is right there.
We got all new studs in there and a new stud in there where it was missing one. I've chased all the threads on everything. The studs I put back in here, I put the high temp copper anti-seize lubricant so that whoever's got to take these out in another 100 years, they can put flowers on my grave if they feel like it. I hope this thing's still around another 100 years, but who knows? Next thing I do on this manifold before we clean it up and get it ready for paint is that I want to drill out these very tiny little weep holes and make sure they're clean. We've got this extension here to go on the top of the exhaust manifold that's more than adequate and in actually the best shape of any of them we've had. I'll put the side cover back on here too. Right now I'm looking for a gasket I may just use some of that really high temp silicone and make gaskets for this. We're gonna pre-lube and put all the push rods in. You can see right here, at one time with this tractor, one of those come loose and it hit the valve cover. While I was working on the exhaust manifold, I took a peek at the parts book, and it was interesting to note that at 4G 2010, they made a switch from a solid pipe from the top of the exhaust manifold up to one with the stub shaft and the extension with the clamp. Up until 4G 2011, you had to lift the hood all the way up over the exhaust pipe, which would be hard to do for somebody with 81J 950 loader shoulders.
Yes. That's true. 81J 4497.
If anybody knows where that loader is, that was our baby back in the day. My dad's got thousands of hours in that machine. I'm gonna torque these down to 60. We lucked out and I found one of the little oil lines for the back set off of Redemption. The poor thing. At least it's redeemed itself. So we took these back off of Whiskers over there because we think one of them's bent. Actually, maybe the one in line with what hit the valve cover at the top, so we're going to swap that out with another one off a Lefty. We've actually found two bent ones that we couldn't move the adjustment back and forth, so we're getting that sorted out.
See, it gets to there and quits.
Good thing we have a few extra parts around here because it turns out 3 of those were bent, so we're taking it all back apart and putting it back together.
See, these are working fine because I've had these all apart, remember, and cleaned up.
These are the ones that were originally on Lefty that we set aside, and we used the ones off of the real McCoy early 7J. They were actually slightly a little bit better shape. So there's nothing wrong with these. They're all cleaned up and they're ready to go, and they have good margins on them yet too. Turns out 5 of those adjusters were bent. All 4 of them up here and 1 of them back here. So it was a good thing we took that back off and checked them. Got everything all installed. The oil line system on this one comes up through a T and has one that goes over to here and one that goes over to here, as opposed to later on Lefty, or actually head case over there, where they had more of a manifold system. I'm going to set the valve cover on there just to keep things clean. And this one has the gasket on the bottom of the valve cover already. When Dad and I install these, we like to put them on the head, glue them down to the head. Then when you adjust the valves, oil doesn't go all over. We're going to do the valves before we try and start this engine. Oh, I hate that wire wheel. Why didn't we throw it away?
Well, I gotta find another
Holy,
one.
just stay still. This is like a shop cactus. Dad got in the shop cactus. Apparently we've been saving this one for something.
I don't know.
My grandpa would buy new stuff like this, and it would sit in a toolbox, and we were never allowed to use it ever.
Remember the one, he had a toolbox, it had brand new 2 sets of brand new screwdrivers in it.
Yeah, that was Grandpa. We got new tools, but we can't use those new tools. What a piece of... All right, I know exactly what to do with this thing. Somebody's probably going to ask, but yep, we're still waiting on Lefty's head. It's down at the machine shop. It actually doesn't show a gasket between there in the book. We're going to go ahead and use the high temp form of gasket. We'll put a bead around there. We'll let it sit overnight, and then we'll torque it down. Yes, this is for exhaust. It says it right there on there.
And I wouldn't go around the bolts either.
I don't think we need to.
I'd just do like you're doing there and leave it be.
In fact, we don't even need to put the nuts on it tonight.
Just enough to hold it on there.
We'll leave it right there, and then in the morning we'll torque it down. All of the other kittens wanted to stay in this morning.
But you wanted to come outside, huh? And see everybody. How are you, Mrs. Little Stripes? You love your trucks, don't you? Yeah. Can you really have too many big yellow cats? Do you know which way's off? Because I don't know if it was off or on.
They all have these steel handles on there. We just took it off, but you can see it's rattled around on here so much that it's wore almost through. And we can still move it, but we don't know which is off and on. And that was the same on Lefty. They had been on there so long they had wore through that brass. And the reason we're doing that is we're going to take the fuel line off all the way back to the tank. We're going to make a new one. There's a lot of damage on this one. There's seepage coming from somewhere, and we're hoping that'll solve the problem once and for all.
There it went. All right. And we got to take it loose here on the lift pump. And I don't... There's no clamp on this here. Got that one loose?
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Well... Yeah, that's been brazed and...
Couple of times. I actually think it's leaking.
I do too.
Right
Look at that
here.
green right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just left that nut on there.
Yeah.
So you're going to unsolder those and we'll redo them. More braze repairs. I think...
Right here.
Before you solder anything, let's measure it out and I'll put some of that heat shrink where it goes through everything.
Right here.
Yeah.
Kind of like I did on Lefty's fuel line down there. You can see where it turns to black. That's heat shrink protected. We're going to need our fuel line to be about 6 to 8 inches long.
We're going to unsolder this fitting and solder it onto the new piece of copper. These are kind of a proprietary thing. They're very unique. We couldn't really find any companies that would make us an adapter for a rubber hose for Lefty, so that's what we did on Lefty, and then we're also going to resolder them with silver solder.
I think that was leaking around here like that one on Lefty. See that crack?
Oh, yeah. Yes, it was.
Yeah.
That explains the diesel everywhere down
that
on...
little drip.
Might as well make sure the torch works.
There we go. Before we forget, I'm going to snug all of these down on the exhaust manifold. They sat overnight with the silicone. It was not on there very good.
No,
that's why it was leaking.
I think so. Okay. That should do it.
Got that in soldered on. I've put about a little over 3 feet of heat shrink on here. I'll shrink that down. We'll put this on the machine. We'll probably solder the other end after it's on the machine.
I want to say thank you for joining us on this LAOL weekend edition. The camera decided that the microphone was just plain too much work, so I'm doing a voiceover now and trying to explain what's going on in the background. I do want to thank you for joining us once again. Dad's over there doing something, I don't know what. He's cleaning dirt out. There was a remarkable amount of dirt stuck in the bell housing where the fuel line went through, so you can see the pile on the floor. Now we're putting in the fuel line. Got the heat shrink on it. Looking great. Great job, Aaron. And the fuel line's in. Now we have to try and bend it up to the valve. This is difficult. Of course, we have to take the floor pan loose. And we're getting it hooked up. There it is. It's screwing into the valve. Looks great. Fuel line goes through the bell housing. Dad's putting an extra piece of rubber hose to protect it over the top of the fuel line. You can see it wiggling in there, and there's a heat shrink, the rubber hose, and it comes through the bell housing. And now Dad's going to solder the other end after he cuts it off. Look at that going together. I'm holding the fitting on. Dad soldered it. Looks great. Let's get it hooked. Oh, we're going to flush the line, and it's a good thing the audio went out, because right there, Dad said a few things I would have had to cut anyway. I'm starting to put the pony motor together. Got the carburetor Those little nuts on there, oh, we really fought those things. Now we'll return to our regular scheduled program where a father and son duo restore old Caterpillar D4s on the dry, dusty plains of eastern Colorado. Legend has it they're still tightening down pony motor components to this very day. We got most of the stuff on the pony motor all hooked up, but we pulled the plugs in the pony motor. The one on the other side looks great. This one over here, so the pony motor's over full. There's a little oil coming out the weep hole. I don't know if we got bad rings or maybe because it's over full, it's just kind of weeping through there. Definitely before we start this thing, we're going to drain some of that oil out of there. But up next, I've got the wire set, and I got this set from the Brillman Company. Now, they have two sets. One of them is for early D4, D2 pony motors, and the other set is for later D4, D2 pony motors. And this set is for the early RD4, and it is a B1008-007.
My name is Bond, James Bond.
Brillman Company has good made-in-the-USA stuff. I've bought quite a few things from them, and they ship quick.
It's got grease on it. Nothing goes back on this tractor unless it's clean.
That belt, about the perfect tension. It's a little tight, but it's chilly in here, and it's a new belt. Got that tight. We're just finishing up our wires, and these early pony motors, this is a updated American Bosch magneto, and you might be able to see it on the side. Somebody questioned, oh, well, American Bosch, everything American, this, that, but it says right there, American Bosch. What we did here is I doubled up some heat shrink, and the reason this is so tight in here is because it comes in close to this belt, and I think that's because of this different magneto. But this pony motor block is completely different than the one on Lefty. The one on Lefty actually has provisions for the routing of the wires cast into the block. So this is a very, very, very early pony motor.
I'll just recap it real quick. You adjust the valves in the order 1, 3, 2, 4.
Cold, you're looking for 0.007 to 0.010 inch.
After you run it, after you warm it up, within 10 minutes of shutting down, you need to check the valves again, and they should be set at
exactly 0.010 inch. Dad's removing the timing mark cover there so that we can monitor where we're at when we turn the engine, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Dad and I might have found something very, very wrong on this head, and I'm trying to look at my pictures, and this is the best I can get zoomed in on it to try and tell what valves that they put, because we just discovered something that I'm not too sure about. This is exhaust, this is intake, these are exhaust, intake, exhaust. But we just realized that somebody wrote on here I for intake on the exhaust, E for exhaust on the intake, and so on and so forth down the line. So now we're questioning that maybe somebody put the wrong valves in the wrong ports. And the problem is exhaust valves are different than intake valves. They are heat treated and much different.
They're the same size,
yeah,
but they're different, like you said, they're different heat treatment on the exhaust valves.
And the problem is we put this on here now and we can't see, so that's why I'm trying to review the pictures to see what we've got. And now if we've got to swap around valves, we got an even bigger problem because we have to have them reground again because they're not going to be right. All this stuff on that head was done by the previous owner and another shop that we are not familiar with, and we assume that they did everything correctly. All I did was the pre-combustion chambers install and removal. If I have to take that off, we're going to ruin another head gasket, and we're going to have to take it back in to get the valves ground.
They got to be retouched.
I'm not going to be a happy camper because this is, and we got to take apart all the water neck stuff for the radiator again.
Yep.
How many times do we have to get beat before we quit?
I don't know. I don't know.
We're there. I mean, we're setting valves. We're ready to start this thing. I'm going to go in on the sophisticated LAOL computer network. Enhance. 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 Too far. Back up. Oh my goodness. It's an exhaust valve.
We could go through all this work, pull this thing off, and look at it and say, oh, it's fine.
It's fine. I've verified it in the sophisticated LAOL lab that those are indeed the correct exhaust placement and intake placement valves. So we're going to move ahead. I'm not 100% sure, but I am 98% sure. Is that enough for you?
All right.
I mean, we're this
what's
far.
Worst case happen, we'll melt a couple of valves and we'll tear it off anyway.
It'll send all sparkly little things out the exhaust.
Tops of the piston and everything else.
I mean, you know, what do we got to lose, right? Only a priceless RD4.
The most clear marks, I think it was on this one, the way it was setting up on the table over there, is that this looked like an exhaust valve in this one. So I don't know. You know, this is fun, isn't it?
No, it's just a barrel of laughs daily.
I think we're okay. We're going to go ahead and finish setting the valves.
That one's perfect right at 9. This one is about 10. I got no movement on a 10. 10 is really tight. So those two are good. 9's perfect. Okay, there's that. And you can almost, you get to doing this, you can almost feel them by hand. That's a snug 10. Yeah, we're good.
So we've been checking our timing for the valves. The valves are set and done, but I'm going to go ahead and give that pilot bearing some grease. You can see the zerk inside there.
The valves are done. We put about 4 shots of grease in that pilot bearing.
We're cleaning up the breather and the pony motor intake here. We're going to clean the oil bath.
And we're going to put all the other stuff on the top of the pony motor so we can get that firewall on there.
We're not seeing any surprises here. All this stuff's relatively clean. We've gotten very lucky, and we have original Caterpillar valve cover nuts. And you can see right there, that's just a kind of a, I don't know, like a tin beauty cover over the top of the nuts. Kind of like they put on truck lug nuts.
And yes, that is factory Caterpillar. Let's get the intake manifold gaskets on. Let's get the exhaust manifold gaskets on. Nice. And those are a 2F4588. I'm sorry, folks, I don't have the part number for these handy.
Next, the exhaust manifold. Got the exhaust manifold on. Now let's do the intake manifold. And those are just brass nuts, so I torqued them to whatever I felt like they were tight. That's on. Let's move on to something else.
And you'll notice that I even kept the brass nuts that still had paint on them for the intake manifold here. And Dad was super happy. So I said, you know, it'd be nice if sometime you bring out donuts from Lamar's Donuts with you. And he says, well, I thought about it, but you guys are on a diet. And I said, but if they showed up out here, it would be rude of me not to eat one.
I knew you'd have a reason.
I like donuts normally, but I've been doing pretty well on the diet. Dad's got the breather cleaned up. I'm going to put it on. That's going to take this 3B3267 underneath.
We got that on there. You've got to disassemble this completely to get it under these throttle and choke cables. So if you're removing one or installing one, you just have to take it all apart.
There's an O-ring in there. There's one in there. There's a copper washer, a spring copper washer. And we put a little tire lube in that one.
It's a Caterpillar. There's always one.
Come on over here. I want to show you something. It's kind of unique and cool, and I think it's something we're going to leave. Well, come on. What are you waiting for? There's candy. There's no candy, but what I got here is as good as candy. Because the previous owners were going to turbocharge this tractor, actually McCoy Caterpillar called it an air actuator, and they used a lot of turbocharged RD4s and D4s up in the ski resorts and higher altitude here in Colorado. But you can't use an oil bath air cleaner with a turbocharger. It would suck too much, it would suck in the oil, it would burn oil, it would make a mess. So they've converted this air cleaner to a paper filter. So this air cleaner now takes a Napa Gold air filter, and this is the canister style, like is on all the modern Caterpillar equipment. And this is a Napa 6573 Napa Gold. And that fits in there absolutely perfectly over that flange that they've modified. And the old cup actually seals it in from the bottom. Now, Dad was a little worried about using it because it's not original, but I said, who's going to know? Just the people on YouTube that watch this.
To make that conversion, what they did was take the top of this air intake off and modify the bottom of this to accept one of those canister style filters very tightly. And this is really, really a good upgrade. Well thought out. Most of these are homemade gaskets from here on out because, well, some of them you can't get, and honestly, some of these are just easier to make and cheaper. Dad just drained a little bit of oil out of the pony motor. It was a little over full, and some oil was seeping through a cylinder over on the passenger side. Driver's side. I guess the middle's the driver's side. I don't know. Over on that side where Dad is. We cut nylon straps like we did on Lefty to hold the air box in.
For the adhesive, I had really, really good luck with this Loctite Mr. 5414 MR 5414. It's a black contact adhesive. The same stuff they use on airliners, and it is good stuff. You put it on there, let it tack up, put your stuff on there, and it is stuck.
Again, another homemade gasket. Almost forgot the cotter pins.
Starting to look like a tractor.
Yeah, buddy, what are you putting on here?
Exhaust, shall I?
The 6B3019 exhaust flapper. And this wouldn't fit the original exhaust on this RD4 that was actually broke. We replaced with a little newer one off of a newer RD4, but this is Dad's baby.
And I hate to say it, but I'm going to steal the one off of Buster for my baby.
It's just spring-loaded here, and this little bugger probably blows plenty of exhaust to open her up.
It also keeps wasps out.
Yeah.
Up next is a firewall.
Hooking up the oil pressure gauge line. We got the oil bath air cleaner for the pony motor installed here. There's a gasket on this side of the firewall and then one on the other side. That's all in there. And we're going to put the other floor pan in here and tighten that down.
Next, the throttle linkage.
Next, the floor pan. Now we got it. Got our fuel line going to the pony motor. And that goes to right there.
What the heck?
Is that right?
Yep. We'll have to spin that around. But
Yeah. Yeah, I took about a half a cup of oil out of there, and I think this has quit leaking.
Good.
got one last thing to do, and it kind of sucks. So I've got this oil, I don't know what you call it, oil extractor. And you can, it's pneumatic. You can pump it by hand or you can hook air to it. But I've got hoses here that I can hook to it for different lengths. So a lot of the modern cars, you just extract the oil through the, that's how they change oil so quick. They suck it out through the dipstick hole, put new oil in it, new filter, and you're good to go. But this is very handy for taking oil out of differentials, different compartments, or diesel that's got some contaminants in it out of a fuel tank.
Is it nasty in there?
It's not terrible, but this will vacuum out some of the junk.
I wonder if I should pull that line loose and just drain it.
Nah, we're okay. This will get more than the drain because the drain doesn't go from the bottom.
Yeah, but...
That drain is a half an inch off the bottom. That's everything that was in the fuel tank. The stuff you can see down there is not loose because I was trying to move it around with that suction hose.
Are we really ready to fire this thing up? We got all the parts on it?
I think we are. I think we are. Needs water, needs diesel. We've checked the fluids.
Gasoline.
Some gasoline. I think we're ready. We checked the final drives. We do need to check the transmission. We checked the fuel pump today. I checked it. The pinion, we checked it. I think we're in pretty good shape here.
I think I'll break this and drain it.
Just flush it out.
Just flush, let it run for 10 seconds and...
Yeah. It's good fuel for the stove.
Meow, I feel like $1,000,000. Meow, 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 meow. I feel perfect.
Okay, Whiskers is ready to run. We've spent the last 3 days solid, 12 hours a day working on this thing. So, it'll be in the next episode. I do want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you on that next episode. That's a metaphor for something. Not sure what. Well, maybe I am. This channel's super duper deep.
Is it in there?
There's a "that's what she said" joke somewhere.
So, you look good. You look really good. What are you doing later? Usually that line works every time, but this time they just blew me off. I'll go ahead and put it on. I've got all the brass nuts over here. Brass nuts. Before we forget, I need to snug all of these nuts down on these nuts. Sun's really coming into the shop, isn't it, this time of year?
Because it's, what is it, 4?
Is it cocktail hour?